we actually get these little things called mini ice ages. And they are a bit of a misnomenclature though, but what it really means is it's a cooling of the Earth based on the amount of solar radiation that comes from the sun, human impact on the environment, as well as things like volcanic eruptions. So what's interesting is that a study has come out from Northumbria University that's been arguing that instead of Earth heating up, starting as of 2021, the world is going to enter a period of cooling that's more like a mini ice age or a little ice age, or an LIA as they call it.
Yeah.
Now, Northumbria University, the scientists there are saying, well, this would be really, really good, though, in a sense, because these ice ages aren't like the ice age that we imagine or picture, right? So it's not like everyone's going to be all of a sudden suddenly encased in ice and frozen to death. Again, it's just cooling that's going to happen to the Earth. And the reason why they say this is actually a good thing is that there's a potential of global warming being somewhat overridden by this effect, which could give humankind more time to deal with pollution and with, again, this increase in CO2 levels, the increase in heat overall, melting of the ice caps, and what have you, which again, all has this domino effect on everyone on the planet Earth. And so they're saying from this study that, all right, this is a really good thing, and or it could be a very good thing, but it will happen, and that it could happen starting in the next 5 or so years. And so there are many resources online that you'll come across seeing this study and quoting this study. But there is actually a faction on the other side going, no, this is not going to happen. Or there's a potential of an LIA happening naturally, but it won't be anything like what's being pushed by this study. There are many scientists. There's actually an article from The Guardian that actually refutes the idea of this specific mini ice age, saying that they happen naturally. There's no way of really guessing when they happen per se. Again, they kind of have a general idea of maybe 10 to 15 years, but that can change because of so many variables that impact the sense of our environment and what's actually happening with it, the cooling and the heating of. And so many people are saying, well, you know what, the studies aren't really that conclusive, because much of the resources they pulled for this study were only from 34 years ago up until now. And they said that's just not enough time to get a full picture of this, of what will happen next, of what this ice age will do, if there will be one, and the impact it'll have. And, also they're saying too, well, people are just getting scared and feeding off the word ice age, not understanding its actual real meaning, and that it's more so of a misnomenclature. It's really just a cooling of, again, the Earth. And many scientists are saying too that if it was to decrease or to lower or to cool the Earth, it'd only be by 0.3 Celsius. And it would only last for about a decade to about 15 years total, which most people believe that's not even enough time for it to assist in fighting against pollution, fighting against global warming, and just the heating of the Earth overall.
And just to, for anybody who's just joining us, we're talking about essentially something that half relates to this solar cycle. So it's also called the solar magnetic activity cycle. It's a nearly periodic, about 11-year change in the sun's activity. It includes the levels of solar radiation, the ejection of solar material, the appearances of sunspots, the flares, the sun's magnetic polarization, and everything like that. It does shift and change over an average of about 11 years, and so it has this cooling effect, which is only like 0.3 degrees 0.3 degrees difference, which is not, it's not that massive, and it basically correlates to about a 15-year human activity that can also lower, or rather in this case, of course, because it's global warming, up the temperature by 0.3 degrees over that time. So, what this researcher is saying is that, well, what's going to happen in this next few years is that, let's say that 0.3 drop, and that our actions that bring it up 0.3 is essentially going to cancel each other out. So there's nothing to worry about, quote unquote. But then when the next kind of 11-year cycle begins, we're now going to see an additional 0.3, and over that period of time, another 0.3 from us. And you can kind of see where the math is leading, that essentially over a few decades, overall, we're still trending upwards. But the researchers from Northumbria are saying, no, actually, what's going to happen is it's going to be this huge ice age instead, right? Because several centuries ago, and I believe it was between the period between the 1300 to 1850, there was a, quote, dramatic, according to science, a dramatic drop in solar activity that equated to about a 0.5 degrees cooler period of time, during which the River Thames actually sometimes froze over in the UK and everything like that. And so if you kind of look at over a long period of time, yes, there is the possibility of getting really, really cold, but an actual, full-blown ice age, as it were, like, Day After Tomorrow, that film, you'd have to be about 4 to 8 degrees total lower. So not, we're not even reaching the 1 degree. So to call it an ice age is a little, it's like, shock value. Click here, read this article, right? And so when you kind of look at all the different facts, a different picture sort of emerges. The other thing to note is, we can only, see what the sun is doing with limited instrumentation, limited understanding, and we don't have, millennia of recordings that we could really truly look at and see, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen, right? So trying to predict what the sun will do and what will happen here and what will happen there is a little bit like looking at a river, right? And it's a pretty steady stream, and you throw in a twig, and you can sort of see where it's going based on the path that it takes, etc. But then maybe there's a little bit of wind, you throw that same twig, and you're like, oh, okay, with the wind, it's going to go faster this direction, right? But then it's no wind, and then you throw the twig, right? It's kind of looking at that and trying to interpret that data. You can, pretty accurately say that it's probably going to move in the direction of the flow of the water, and it's not going to go upstream, right? But then your predictions tend to be guesstimates at some point, depending on what you're trying to predict about that twig. And, all of these researchers and all of these articles, what they're showing us is, here's some facts, and here's what we've noticed, and here's what could happen. But I think what, two of the things that we sort of took away from this was, one, educate yourself, right? Just because you read that somewhere doesn't mean that anybody with, if you've got a WordPress account and a keyboard, you can pretty much write whatever you want on the internet, right? So check your sources and make sure that you are able to read all the different sides of a particular story or a particular article or a particular topic. And the other thing to note is that regardless of sort of where, some of this research conclusions tend to go, if you actually look at the research and the science behind it, and not look like necessarily at the end results of these or the end conclusions of them, the fact of the matter is climate change is a thing.
Yeah, all the scientists, no matter on what side they're on, they're taking whether eventually we're going to have an ice age or eventually we will just keep heating up until it's not sustainable. All of them are really leading to the same fact of that this pollution is impacting how we live and how we're going to live, and that we are seeing climate change. We are seeing overall a big impact on our environment and how we're going to be living in it. And all the science community, again, no matter on what side, is really seriously concerned about this and is doing a ton of research on it. And I think it's really important to highlight these things because they so easily get, kind of swept under the rug, if you will, and go, oh, well, I'm not seeing it now. I have snow outside in my yard, or, it's California and it's sunny out, so this isn't a big problem. But again, what feels minor to us, we've really got to look at the numbers and really got to look at the studies, and we are seeing an increase in heat. We are seeing an increase in changes, so severe changes to specific parts of the world, and it is impacting the ecosystem, from fish to land animals to air to Evin. So it is a very serious thing, and we need to be paying attention more to these type of reports. And looking at both sides, because there are plenty of people saying too that, oh, well, global warming, climate change is not a thing. Okay, well, where's your proof? And then they will try to go and pull some random, bit of information. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Does that mean what it really means or what you're trying to push it to mean? Or is there more context to how you're utilizing that study and it actually proves you wrong, but you're pulling the part that works for your argument? And I think that's really a big thing as well, is to realize that there are people who are trying to actually, in a way, manipulate the way people think, or gaslight you in a way, as we talked about last week about gaslighting, and to make you feel one specific way because that's the way they want you to think, because they think they are correct or they can benefit from that way of thinking in some form or fashion.
Right, and politicians do that all the time. It's called reframing, right?
Yes.
So if you watch a debate with a politician that knows what they're doing and a politician that maybe doesn't know what they're doing, you'll often notice that the politician that does know what they're doing, they won't necessarily answer a question. They will pick the parts that, as Evin mentioned, benefits themselves or their point that they're about to make, and they'll just go on that, right? They'll often say, "Oh, thank you for your question, so and so," and like kind of not quite answer the question, right? And then sort of go and if you think about it in the terms of reframing, it's sort of like if somebody had an empty picture frame and here's the question, right? And it fits really nicely in the picture frame. The politician or the person who is maybe writing an article or doing a thesis paper or is in court will take that frame and they will place it either on part of the truth or completely out of it and start talking about something else. So it is very important to educate oneself, and it's hard to determine what you should trust, right? It is hard. Like I said, it's so easy to go online and write whatever the F you want, right? And someone somewhere may publish it and it may look legit, and it may have ads all over, and it may ask you to sign in, and it may have a cool name. But really try to make sure that you are informed, and it does help when multiple sources corroborate the same information, but that doesn't necessarily make it true either. It could just be that those sources corroborate with each other.
Well, and one other important factor I think to bring up is that when we say that some of this information can be used in a way that's manipulative or untruthful, I do want to clarify, too, that the head researcher at Northumbria University does truly believe in her research. She is actually wholeheartedly adamant about it and really does truly believe this will happen and feels like her information is on point. And the reason why I say this is because other scientists who have disagreed with her have had conversations with her to try to understand where she's coming from. And they have said that too, that yes, this scientist absolutely does believe in what she's putting out there and that she is putting the work into it and the research into it. But they just feel like it's just not enough information to go off of to automatically push forward the thought of an actual mini ice age truly impacting us and what kind of impact it will actually have on our Earth. So, it's not to say that she's being manipulative or trying to get attention, but what it is pushing the fact that other people can take your information, throw it out there in any light that they want. Mm-hmm. They can twist it, they can manipulate it because it either gets people to click, so they get ad revenue, they get traffic and everything else, or again, it pushes some other ulterior motive by getting you to think in this way. So it's important to know that really core three things. One is understanding the impact on the earth. Two is understanding the fact of educating yourself and looking at both sides of an argument. Yes, it takes some time, but trust me, you're going to be way better off doing a little bit of homework than not, and just going off the cuff with the first thing you see. And then the third thing being, of course, that, people will manipulate information, but that doesn't mean the source of that information is the one who's trying to do the manipulation.